folks, welcome to the show. Watch Tangled the Series. Watch Tangled the Series! Watch Tangled the Series. You know, if you wanna. 10 years, the longer it lasts, the shorter it feels. The first decade of your life is important. It's all about learning things that are going to help you survive, such as how much your parents can milk you for all you're worth. 10 years ago, the first audiences were introduced to Rapunzel, Eugene, Pascal, and Maximus, as on November 24th, 2010, Tangled made its theatrical debut and would go on to be Disney's second biggest franchise of the past decade. And we're going to talk about it all as we revisit this tale of kidnapping, overly dramatic haircuts, moon rocks, and the wedding we all waited for despite the fact we'd already seen it. This is a look back at the Tangled franchise. Now, there are plenty of people who can talk about what makes this movie so amazing far more eloquently than I, a lowly Brit with speech problems who puts words like eloquently into his scripts despite barely being able to say them, will be able to. But I'm going to try and talk about this movie without just shouting it with incoherent praise. The key word being try. Tangled set the standard for what a modern Disney animated movie needed to be. Well, that lasted -3 seconds. It perfectly took the aesthetic and design of a hand-drawn movie and added an extra dimension. When it comes to computer animation, the visuals will always be what will age the most rapidly. I mean, look at how CGI looked at the beginning of the last decade compared to the end. But while Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen start to show their age, especially with sequels coming a few years later, there's something about Tangled's animation that feels kinda timeless and really holds up. Mostly. Occasionally there are moments where you can tell this was the same people who gave us Meet the Robbinsons. One part of the animation not enough people talk about are the colours, because damn is this movie vibrant, especially during I See the Light. But you can't talk about Tangled without talking about the best leads of any Disney movie ever, Rapunzel and Eugene. I mean, you know I love you, but you were made in the 80s. They hadn't invented character development yet. And yes, I called him Eugene because that's his name, not Flynn Rider. That is a huge moment in the movie where he reveals his real name, and from that point on, Rapunzel only ever calls him by that name, but I guess people just fell asleep during those parts of the movie because no one seems to know what his real name is. Not even Disney. Like, I'm actively against gatekeeping in fandom culture, but if you call Eugene Fitzherbert Flynn Rider, just get out. Rapunzel and Eugene have one of the most carefully crafted and well-written relationships in all of cinema. Despite the fact on paper the story seems like nothing but a bunch of tired cliches such as the bickering couple who eventually grow to like each other, but everything from the pacing to the writing feels so natural and believable. Time is taken away from the story just for the two to sit and have these deep, honest conversations that really ground the characters. The romance between Rapunzel and Eugene doesn't feel forced, and the fact Tangled has arguably the best pacing of any Disney movie ever doesn't hurt. There is a reason this relationship caught on, and I don't think Tangled would have had the success it has if the romance hadn't been as strong. Then there's the return of Alan Menken to write the music, where it felt like a continuation of what he began with Enchanted, but now with lyricist Glenn Slater. The two were able to take the classic Disney formula and modernize it, while still having it fall in line with the established traditions of the Renaissance. Unless we forget what currently serves as the last real Disney villain song. Unless you count Shiny, which I kinda don't, as Tamatoa really isn't a villain, he's more just a minor antagonist, pretty much just a walking plot point. But this was the movie that sits in the awkward transition between unapologetic Disney and self-referential Disney. Enchanted came out 3 years prior and was all about making fun of outdated elements of Disney movies, something Disney today has a severe addiction to. However, Tangled is very subtle when it comes to its commentary on past Disney movies.
No, sorry boys, I don't sing.
Most of the time. I personally really like how Tangled goes about this. We hadn't yet reached the age of characters being one step away from looking directly at the camera and hitting us over the head with how subversive it is that would arrive with Frozen. And don't take that the wrong way, I mean, I love Frozen! Unless of course you don't, in which case it is the very bane of my existence. For the re-release of Beauty and the Beast in 2012, the last time anything good carrying that title would see a wide theatrical release, a new short based on Tangled was produced, focused on the wedding between Rapunzel and Eugene called Tangled Ever After. I don't think people understand how much of a big deal this short was when it came out. This was the first time since The Rescuers Down Under 20 years prior that Disney Animation would produce an official continuation of one of their movies. This was no direct-to-DVD movie or downgraded TV series. It was a new addition to the canon made by the same animation studio studio and same directors that told an original story that takes place after the movie. That was pretty much unheard of for Disney. All in all, the short isn't all that special in terms of content, since despite it being about Rapunzel and Eugene's wedding, basically none of it is actually shown. However, it is very important that we address the short's existence, as it's important to what's coming up. It's just a fun showcase of CGI slapstick that focuses on Maximus and Pascal chasing after Rapunzel and Eugene's wedding rings. But something that really surprised me on rewatch is just how funny this short is. From references to the movie, fun visual gags like Rapunzel's veil, the outlandish fantasy sequence that is also the first time we get to hear Queen Ariana speak, and the only time she will ever be voiced by Carrie Walgreen, but there's not really much going on in terms of story or characters to talk about. I mean, we don't even get to hear any of Rapunzel or Eugene's vows. But this is way longer than anyone should be talking about a 6-minute long rejected Looney Tunes short, so let's move on. Confession time. This was the first instance of me watching the Disney Cruise Line's production of Tangled. I know, I'm a disgusting fake fan. And I have no excuse as to why it took me this long. I'm the biggest Disney fan there is, and currently training to be a musical theatre performer, yet I've just never really felt compelled to watch it before. I always saw it as merely a stepping stone to Tangled getting on Broadway, so I thought I'd wait for that, but obviously that hasn't happened yet, despite something being in the works apparently. So I guess it's time to watch it and see just how well they did at adapting Tangled into a stage show. First thing I should mention is I can't really judge this as a full musical, as it's only an hour in length. I mean, I wasn't expecting a full 2-act show with an intermission, but the fact the stage adaptation is shorter than the movie and will feature 3 new songs by Alan Menken is concerning to say the least. And since they are the most interesting thing here, let's start with those 3 new musical numbers. Flower of Gold is our new opening number that replaces the prologue, and it's not really a worthy trade-off if you ask me. The song lacks any real atmosphere and does a really poor job of introducing Gothel. Wanted Man sets itself up as Eugene's new solo, but then turns into this odd group number that barely involves Eugene and really didn't need to be here. And finally there's When She Returns, a really great number that confirms, yes, everyone in Corona is in fact an idiot. Overall, the new songs are just kind of okay. I don't dislike any of them, but if they don't make it through to the Broadway version, I'm not going to be torn up about it. Now, I don't know how many people out there actually enjoy Tangled the Musical, so here's where I start making enemies. The guy playing Eugene really does not fit. He's obviously very talented, but this just isn't the right role. He's not really charismatic or suave, he yells a lot of his lines, and overall is just a nervous mess throughout. Rapunzel and Gothel make this show, however. I have no issues with either of their performances. They do a fantastic job at capturing the same energy of the original performance while still making it their own, and you can tell how much fun the actress playing Gothel is having, especially during Mother Knows Best. Okay, so what didn't I like about the musical? Well, as mentioned previously, the runtime is just an hour long, and they are trying to cram the entire movie in, minus Pascal for some reason. This completely ruins the pacing of everything, as the actors feel like they are constantly on fast forward. There are no moments where they are allowed to just sit quietly and process stuff. As soon as one character finishes speaking, the next line has already begun. This means all the iconic dialogue they take from the film lacks the same sort of punch. It's a shame because the actors are trying their best and are clearly very talented, but it's so hard to create an engaging and emotional performance when they have to rush through all their lines and can't allow for a single moment of silence. It showed there is lots of potential for Tangled as a full Broadway show, but the runtime it has really hurt the overall product. You knew this was coming. On June 3rd, 2015, 3 years after the last piece of Tangled content, it was announced we were getting a brand new TV series based on the movie. At this time, we only had this promo image to go off, featuring Rapunzel and Eugene's good side in a new art style inspired by Rapunzel's tower drawings from the original movie. Oh, and Rapunzel's hair was back. Taking place in the years and years of asking and asking that were mentioned in the epilogue of the original movie, Tangled the Series picks up shortly after Rapunzel has been freed from the tower and reunited with her family, and is basically about answering all the big questions still lingering over her. What are her experiences now that the world has opened up to her? How does she deal with the trauma being locked away for the first 18 years of her life? What's her relationship with her parents like? What's the next step in her relationship with Eugene? Is she even ready for that next step? What does she have to do to become queen? Does she even want to be queen? Perhaps the show's biggest strength, much like the movie, lies in how Rapunzel and Eugene are written, as they continue to be the most emotionally healthy Disney couple to date, which is definitely helped by the fact both Mandy Moore and Zachary Levi return to reprise their roles. They are both so honest and open with each other. There is never any miscommunication or needless drama between them. They're just two people who love and understand each other on such a deep level. But a spin-off can't just develop the returning characters and call it a day. No, it has to add some new players into the mix, and Tangled the series didn't skip out on this by any means. All these characters just fit in flawlessly into this world, to an extent where when you go back to watch the first movie, you really notice their absence. It's also a bonus they were brought to life by literal Broadway royalty. There are too many great characters to talk about, so here are just some of the highlights. Cassandra, played by Eden Espinosa, is Rapunzel's lady-in-waiting, who wants to join the royal guard, but has issues since her adopted father is captain of said guards. She's hyper-intelligent in combat, resourceful, and easily the most mature and level-headed of the cast, even if she has issues with her pride and a whole lot of insecurities I can't touch here because spoilers. Lance Strongbow, played by James Monroe Iglehart, is an ex-convict and childhood best friend slash partner in crime to Eugene, who struggles more with the whole not being able to rob people blind anymore thing. He's quick-witted, scared easily, and has a certain flair for the dramatics, wanting to be a performer despite his crippling stage fright. King Frederick and Queen Ariana, voiced by Clancy Brown and Julie Bowen respectively, are the rulers of Corona and Rapunzel's loving parents, who are trying to reconnect with their daughter after their 18 years of separation, while also preparing her for the responsibilities of being queen. Ariana is more just the kind and encouraging maternal figure, but she does get some real moments to shine where she lets out her more adventurous side. And then there's Frederick, who I can't really talk about due to spoilers, though I will say he is one of the most deeply flawed yet still sympathetic characters to come out of a Disney show. And Rapunzel's abduction, yeah, it left some scars. And that's all the characters I feel are worth mentioning. Yep, there are no other characters made for the series that warrant any kind of discussion. Okay then, and last but not least, we have Varian. Played by Broadway sweetheart Jeremy Jordan. Yeah, from his very first appearance, this character pretty much became the face of the fandom. He's a teen alchemist who is in denial about the existence of magic in the world despite literally everything. He develops a crush on Cassandra for a while, then his arc goes to places I can't really discuss here due to spoilers. I honestly think at some point I will be making a video talking about Varian, his arc, his massive cult following he obtained overnight, and the positive and negative effects that had on the show and the community surrounding it. Though for the record, I would like to state that I adore Varian, just not to the degree most of the fandom does. So, with all this Broadway star power, you better believe they gave them new songs to sing. But how can you recreate the magic that Alan Menken and Glenn Slater brought to the music of the movie? You get Alan Menken and Glenn Slater, of course. Yeah, they actually got Alan Menken to write the music for the TV spin-off. It still feels unreal to me they somehow negotiated that, but I'm so happy they did because it led to the greatest soundtrack any TV series has ever had. The show only ever really did songs in the big Double M specials that they do at the start, middle, and end of the season, with a few dropped into the regular episodes here and there. So it isn't like other shows that would have a new song per episode because the people making this show knew how to use musical numbers. It isn't just the characters breaking into song for the fun of it. The best musical numbers are tied in with a character's emotional journey. They only sing when they absolutely have to because talking would not be enough to communicate such a powerful emotion. That's what the Disney movies of the 90s did, and these songs could honestly go head to head with any of the best from Disney animation. Jeez, I've been talking about this series longer than I expected. Let's try and get through the last few points quickly. The character animation and art style of this show is stunning. There are so many insanely clever callbacks to the original movie. Some are just fun gags, and others are essential plot points or huge moments of character development. Despite the fact it could have used more songs, the series finale was completely perfect, tying up every loose end of the 3 seasons and giving us a definitive ending to the characters' stories, even if it isn't technically the ending. Whew. Okay, let's hurry this last bit along. Tangled is arguably the Disney animation franchise with the largest scope, telling this full, grand-scale story across several different mediums. Every single aspect of this franchise has broken some kind of ground. The original movie perfected the modern Disney animation formula. The short was the first official continuation to a Disney movie that we had gotten in 20 years. The series completely redefined what a spin-off could be, somehow managing to not only match but improve upon the original movie in the process. And the stage show was just a really interesting experiment that showed how a big Broadway-style production of Tangled could work, that showed real promise, even if it wasn't quite there yet. Even though I don't foresee the same flow of content being present in this decade, the Tangled franchise will leave an unforgettable legacy as Disney's most ambitious and well-written story ever, even if it did have to tell the latter half of that story in the shadow of its younger sibling. And whether it be a Broadway musical or something else entirely, I can't wait to see whatever's next for Rapunzel and Eugene. Thanks for watching, folks. See you real soon.